Welcome to the world of rare disease, a show that focuses on awareness and education about rare and complex disorders. My name is Lisa Deck. I am a rare disease patient, a Rare New England board member, and your host for today's show. Today, our guest is Sophia Zilber. Sophia has multiple roles in the rare disease community, including caregiver, employee, board member, and registry developer. Sophia has personal tragic experience with rare disease through losing her daughter, Miriam. Sophia recently published a paper on mitochondrial disease, and she sits on the board for Rare New England, as well as the board of New England Regional Genetics Group. Today, we're going to get to know Sophia and how she is combining her personal and professional experiences to make a difference in the rare disease world. I am so thrilled to have you here today, Sophia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Great. So I do understand that you've been a caregiver for somebody with rare disease, your daughter. And while I'm sure it's challenging to speak about, I was hoping that you could tell me a little bit about Miriam.
Sure. So my daughter, Miriam, she was born in 2017, and she was my fourth baby. I had 3 boys before, and we were, of course, really thrilled to have a girl. And she was born absolutely healthy after a great pregnancy, but when she was 3 weeks old, she had low vital signs, and basically she wasn't breathing quite right, and she ended up going to the hospital by ambulance, and she was put on life support, and turned out that she had Lee syndrome, which is a form of mitochondrial disease, and she died within a month. So she died when she was 7 weeks old, and it's just it's a tragedy that we still have to this day, and that's always with us. And it's been extremely difficult for our family, for our kids. Kids were old enough to understand, and it's been extremely, extremely tragic.
Right. Well, thank you for telling us about her. It is. I don't even have the right words for it, but it's terrible. And I'm so sorry for your loss. It's just awful. And I know that that's part of the rare disease world. So thank you for speaking about it, because I think it's hard to speak about things such as that.
Yeah.
So that is your personal experience, but I want to focus today a little bit about your professional work. And I think we'll start about your education. Where did you, start your education, and where has it brought you today?
Sure. So my education is in computer science and biostatistics. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science and master's in biostatistics, and I've been working in I've been working in software development at first for a few years, and then I've been working in pharmaceutical industry for over 15 years. And I'm currently working in Pfizer, and I'm actually working in rare disease in clinical trials.
Right. And was it when Miriam passed away, is that what kind of made you change to the field of rare disease?
Yeah. So I actually, when she died, I worked in another company, and I switched to Pfizer after she died, but I initially worked in vaccines, and I really wanted to switch to rare disease in her memory, because I thought it would be really meaningful for me, and sort of combine my personal story with my professional work. And so I was able to switch to rare disease, and it's been a very meaningful experience.
Right. So that makes it so work is not just work, it's a personal feeling for you too, because you're honoring your daughter. So I love how you're doing that. You're using skills that you have professionally to contribute to the rare disease world. And I think what's so exciting is that you recently did some work on a registry. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the registry work you've done.
Thank you. Yeah. So after my daughter died, I was trying to find where I could help in the rare disease community. And I felt like, for me personally, having the skills in data analysis and the professional experience I've had, I really wanted to find a way to use that, because I know in rare disease there's always a lot of data that sits there, and just not always enough funding or resources or time to analyze it. And So I've been working on the patient registry for the data was collected by UMDF, United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation. They, at the time when I started in 2018, they've had that data collected for about 4 years. And so there was a lot of data. Over 2,000 patients were in the registry. In our analysis, I think it was around 1,400 patients because not all data was available for analysis. And I've been basically trying to do my best to make sense of the data and to find anything that's valuable in it. It hasn't been such a great data in the sense that we couldn't really use it for research or couldn't be used for clinical trials or treatments or anything like that, unfortunately. But there was a lot of many valuable things in it. For example, patients' opinions were collected in this registry, which was great. And I think there was a question, what is the most important thing that doctors want patients to know about them? So that was a free text response. And patients wrote very personal things, which I think was very interesting and just extremely valuable. And in my paper, I actually put real quotes from patients. And I felt like it was an opportunity to give back to these patients because they've taken the time to write very personal things in a patient registry, really hoping that it will be read. And so I felt good about the fact that we could give back to them and say that everything was read and everything was, everything was discussed and they could see their quotes. And another part of the paper was focusing on also like the challenges with the analysis of this registry, which I was hoping was important to summarize so that other groups who work on patient registries could use it sort of as lessons learned. And I thought, and they are using it. I hear a lot of feedback, and I think it is being used. So I'm glad that it's there.
Right, that's great. So I mean, you're taking information. So for somebody who might not know what a registry is, and this isn't something I had as a question, but can you explain a little bit about what a registry is if you're not in the rare disease world?
Sure. Well, a registry is basically a collection of patient information. It could be entered either by patients themselves, or it could be entered by clinicians, doctors, and there could be various uses for registries. For example, registries could be used as a natural history study. So if patients enter their information over time, this registry information could be used in a clinical trial as a placebo arm. And so all the patients in the clinical trial could get the drug, and so data from the patient registry could be used instead of the placebo arm. So that could really help in rare disease because it's hard to get enough patients.
Right.
Registries could also be used just as a contact registry. So to have contacts of patients to contact them for clinical trials. Also, registries could be used to collect patients' opinions and perspectives, kind of like this registry ended up being used.
Right, that's great. So it's really taking the information from patients and gathering it and putting it together into a usable form.
Right.
And I think you just explained what's so wonderful, the different uses that you could have. And like you had mentioned, it seemed like when you were starting this, you thought it was going to go one way and it kind of didn't go for the clinical trial way. However, it did make it so you have the opinions of patients and then also lessons learned. So for people working on registries in the future. So even if it isn't exactly what you thought it was going to be, it's still useful to people, which is awesome. Sophia, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the challenges that you have when you create patient registries for rare disease patients.
Sure, that's such a good question because I think everyone wants to have a patient registry, and people don't always recognize what the challenges are. From my experience, I found that there are some challenges. One thing is there's not always enough collaboration between the various rare disease groups. And when we want to collect data for rare disease, we really want to have as much data together as possible. So it makes sense to either use the same platform, the same registry platform, or even use the same registry. In some registries, each group can still maintain the ownership of their own data, but still have their data in the same registry, which makes the analysis of the data so much easier. But it also requires a lot of collaboration for groups to come together and discuss it and come up with the best way forward. Another challenge I wanted to mention is I think a lot of times when groups start the registries, they don't always think, will they be able to use this data for, let's say, clinical trials or for research? They may think that they would be able to as long as they have data, but in reality, there's so much to consider about how to design the registry, which platform to choose, how to design surveys, which format of the data or data standards to use, so that the data could be useful for drug development. And so this is something that isn't always considered, like in the case that where I worked also, when I saw the data, it was there for 4 years, and unfortunately it has to start, the data collection has to start over. There's not always enough transparency, I don't think, between researchers, patient foundations and patients. I think a lot of times patients feel like they sign up, they have a lot of hope when they go in. They give their data and they often never hear back. They don't know if their data was used for anything. They don't know what's going on with it. So the transparency is definitely needed so that there would be more collaboration, and so that patients would feel more like partners and like a true, members of this process. And so those are sort of the challenges I've noticed.
Yeah, those are, it's great to note those challenges and then to think about ways to counteract the challenges so that when you're creating your own patient registry, you're doing it the right way. And I think that's super helpful. So thank you for that. So are you still working with registries right now, with patient registries?
So I since I published this paper, I had a few opportunities to present it. I just recently did a presentation at a conference targeting mitochondria, which is usually it's in Germany, in Berlin, but was virtual, which was actually probably even better because more people could join. And, and I have my recording and I was allowed to share it publicly now. So I've been able to share it with the patient community, which I think is really the most important thing here, because I wanted to give, to share it with the patients.
Right.
I've shared my paper and I've had a lot of interesting discussions with a lot of people in mitochondrial disease community, in rare disease community, and a lot of other possible collaborations. And that's been very rewarding, and I hope it's gonna lead to something. And I've actually just recently, just this week, wrote another very short paper, and I wrote it, it's literally 3 pages. I wrote it together with Jason Colquitt. He's an expert on patient registries, and he's also a mitochondrial disease patient. And I basically used my experience, my professional experience and my experience from my previous data analysis of a patient registry. And of course, he's very extensive experience, and we wrote something like a guide for patient foundations, for rare disease patient foundation on patient registries. It's only 3 pages. We wanted to make it very short and very easy to read and very focused. And it's available online, so anyone could read it. So I'm happy about that. And so I continue to see where my experience is helpful, and I'm always happy to hear from anyone or get any feedback or any questions.
Right, that's great. So I think it's nice. So you have the registry out, and then you also have this kind of 3-page how-to or best practices for foundations. So what we'll do with the show is we will make those links available so that people can find them. I will either add them in when I'm editing, or we'll put it in a note because I think that's great. And I know I'm just talking off the cuff, but I know that for my disease, we don't have a patient registry, and perhaps this 3-page document might be a great place for us to start. So
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful that we have those options. And the final thing I want to mention is you also volunteer. You're on the board for a couple organizations, including Rare New England. But
Yeah.
I didn't know if you just want to talk about that for a moment. And, it seems like you are trying to do so many things to honor your daughter, and you're doing it. But I'd love for you just to mention why serving on the board seems to make sense for you in these organizations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on the board of Rare New England and also New England Regional Genetics Group. So I'm definitely very honored to be a part of those organizations. And it helps me to hopefully make more of a difference, have more of a voice, meet other people in the rare disease community, share more about what I do, and hopefully help these organizations.
Right. That's great. And I think in the rare disease world too, it's wonderful how collaborative a lot of people are, and how just talking about things, and, perhaps even from somebody watching this show might think, oh, wow, I think one of my next steps is, to do a patient registry. Let me check out this how-to guide and let me see what's been done. And, I think that's what's wonderful about, sharing and talking about this. So I'm very grateful that you were a guest on our show. And I think, being able to show people the patient registry work that you've done is something that will be beneficial to so many people. So I'm very thankful. So thank you for being here. I think it's great to hear from you and to have you sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. So now, as we conclude, part of our show includes the Rare New England in Motion segment. This show with Sophia will be showcased live via Rare New England's Facebook Live page. Viewers are able to tune in live to see the show and talk to Sophia and guests of the Rare New England staff online to have an interactive discussion. The show, along with all of our shows, can also be found on Rare New England's YouTube page and our social media accounts. If you have a question for us, you can send us an email at info@rarenewengland.org, and we will be sure to include it in our show. Rare New England in Motion is the perfect way to expand upon our mission of engaging with our community. Thank you again to Sophia for being here. From all of us at Rare New England and all the patients and families who keep rare disease in motion, thank you for watching. And remember, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, then think zebras. Thank you for listening.